take off, take flight with you. For we never fly, but we're flying.
Welcome back to Take Flight Podcast. This is episode 135, and this is part of our solo Take Flight Takeaway episodes. Our Take Flight Takeaway episodes are where one of the hosts of Take Flight takes you through a topic in which they feel like you can gain some sort of value from. In this week's episode, which is hosted by myself, OLU, I want to take you through a story. And this story is Redundancy to CFO. On the 1st of May, I was promoted to the Chief Finance Officer of one of our businesses. This is a massive achievement, a massive milestone. I remember when I started 10 years ago, dreaming about one day being a CFO. You could hear that and probably wonder, what were the stages to get to CFO? If you're a regular listener of Take Flight Podcasts, you would have known a year, 2 years ago, I did an episode 78, which is called Navigating My Career Path. If you haven't yet listened to that episode, I highly recommend that you listen to that episode. In that episode, I detailed my potential redundancy experience. So yes, 2 years ago, I was almost made redundant. Like I said, highly recommend that episode and you should really listen to it. But I'll give a short recap. In 2019, I told my manager that I wanted a new challenge. Now, not externally, but internally. I'd been in my current role for 2 years. I felt like I'd reached that ceiling. I had given as much as I could for that role and learned as much as I could from that role. And it was the time for me to look for another opportunity within the company. Manager said, great idea. I'll support you through the whole process. Obviously, as you're aware, COVID started end of 2019, a tragic pandemic where lots of people lost their lives and a lot of people also lost their jobs. So our company started to look and make restructuring plans, hiring freeze. And one of the roles that were discussed was my role at the time. You could imagine the emotions I went through, the uncertainty during that period of time. But thankfully, I started to look internally at other opportunities and other roles that would come. Whilst I was looking, I tried to focus on my passion and I found a role in our digital business. Now, technology is one of my passions. I love technology. I studied financial computing, which is economics and some programming languages. And I just love understanding the engineering aspect of technology. So when a role came up in this business, I was ecstatic. The role wasn't perfect, right? It wasn't the ideal role for myself, but the leader and the manager were amazing. And I remember my mentor at the time said, focus on the manager and the leaders versus the actual role, because that can always change. So anyways, I applied for the job. So I met with the CFO, I met with my manager, and I was offered this role. Over the next 12 months, I just tried to impress. I showed up every single day. I gave 100%. Any opportunity that I got to present to the CFO, I came prepared. The night before, I'll create my presentation. I would have level 1, level 2, level 3 layer of answers, and I would just bring 110% every single day. I also tried to make sure that my leadership style came across because I knew my next role would potentially be managing a team. In terms of team meetings, my personality style, I'm a people person, always trying to see and work with people to find the solution. I wanted to make sure that my brand was correctly represented. Also, you can imagine during COVID, a lot of people were working from home. As soon as things opened up, any opportunity that I had to meet senior leadership, I would take full advantage of that because I didn't know how long I would be in this role for. I didn't know if me coming to the office and meeting the leadership team that I would be interacting with my potentially next manager. Anyways, fast forward, a random Friday, my manager calls me and says, hey, I've got a great opportunity for you. It's a CFO role based in the UK, and I think you'll be a great person for it. Don't answer right now. Think about it, and I'll call you back on Monday. Over the weekend, I was nervous. This is a big opportunity. CFO, am I ready for this role? Can I lead this team? Will I be successful? A lot of fear started to come over me, right? And I've got an abbreviation for fear. It's feel everything, act rational. The fear is okay. I always say whenever you're feeling fear, it's because whatever role or whatever you're about to do, there's some level of challenge, there's some level of growth. If I was 100% certain that I could do this role and there wasn't any challenge there, I would just accept it, wouldn't feel nervous at all. That fear factor is coming from the uncertainty of, am I capable of doing this role? And then the last part of my abbreviation of fear, act rational, is sit down, write down the pros and cons, and just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? So on Monday, my manager called me back and I said, yes, I would love to go for the role. The funny part about this is the GM, the CEO of that business, I had met before in London when I just came into the office one day just to meet the senior leadership. At that time, I didn't know that potentially I'll be working for him in the next year. He remembered our interaction when I was in the office. So went applied for the job, went through multiple interview stages, and finally I was offered the role. As I've started this business, I've followed a framework which one of the hosts of Take Flight podcast actually shared with me, Shiwell. And it's a 90-day framework where the first 30 days you focus on people, the next 30 days you focus on process, and then the last 30 days you spend on product. So it's people, process, and product. So I've been following that process and framework. And what I'm going to do is after 90 days, I'm going to do another episode where I'm going to share my first 90 days as a CFO. You're probably wondering what were some of the key lessons during this process. The first thing I learned is bet on yourself. In 2019, I took that challenge and said, I've been in this role for a significant amount of time. I feel like I've given everything to this role and I've learned as much as I can from this role. And I bet on myself to say, I need a new challenge. The second thing that I learned during this experience is it's more important to have a good manager and leader than a good role. So for me, I had a manager advocating for me in rooms that I wasn't in. So when you're looking for your next role, it's more important to find a good manager that's going to develop you, grow you, and give you the opportunity to shine in front of senior leadership. The next thing is around fear, right? I have an abbreviation for this, like I mentioned. Feel everything, act rational. So it's okay to be nervous, to have fear when you're about to make a tough decision. Most times when it comes to selecting a job, it just means that it's a challenging role that you're going to grow and develop. So feel everything. It's okay to have those emotions and feelings and just act rational. So put down the pros, the cons of that role and make a decision based on logic. And lastly, it's okay to fail. Failure is not the end. I believe life is just a continuous failure, right? Failing forward, always finding new opportunities, new learnings, new opportunities to grow. And it's okay to fail, right? Failing shouldn't be seen as such a negative thing. What it really means is you're doing something that's outside of your norm, outside of your comfort zone. And in those scenarios, it's okay to fail as long as you're learning from it. Hope you've enjoyed this Take Flight Takeaway episode. If you want to find out more information, you can follow us on Instagram at Take Flight Podcast. If you want to follow me personally, you can find me on Instagram at OLU_Okinola. And you can also find more personal content from me at OLU Okinola on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Instagram channel as well. Take care and God bless.
Take off,